There's no doubt that people want to find a way of stopping young men from any community, but it seems particularly the Muslim community is where it's coming from, being radicalised. How do we do this?
I think one of the things is that, first and foremost, before we start, just want to extend our condolences and sympathies to the families of the deceased. I think it's still very raw in the hearts of many people, and it's important that we always keep that in mind, and of course our prayers are with them. In terms of your question, I think one of the main elements is to actually look at the sources of radicalisation. And I think that it's a very, very complex situation. We can't actually use as one facet. It's actually a multifaceted element. And it can include various variables, such as the concept of isolation from the community, lack of Islamic knowledge. You have, of course, the foreign policy element. You have harassment. You have unemployment, family issues, mental health. So there are a multitude of elements. And I think that's the kind of first starting point, to look at that as opposed to looking at the communities themselves.
So if we know these are the ways, and let me put this to Mohammed as well, if we know these are the ways to do it, why is it not working?
Well, I think what you look at where we were 10 years ago and where we are now, we've seen a tremendous amount of work being done by the Imams and the mosques and the community to root out this evil that exists. One of the most important things that we've got to confront is the ideology of violence. Islamic teachings have been distorted. They've used, the suffering of what is happening in Syria and other parts of the world as an excuse to brainwash people. And that's what we've got to confront. The idea is that we as Muslims, have we done enough? I'd actually say no, we haven't. We need to do a lot more. For as long as there are people who are endorsing violence, supporting violence and engaged in terrorism, we've got to do a lot more.
Excuse me, Imam, if we could come to you, Rehan, Saleem, on that point. We've spoken to Mohammed a number of times on this show about this, and he's saying there that he doesn't believe the communities are doing enough. Have you noticed an increase in your community of people that are concerned with potentially some people within the mosques that are behaving suspiciously or maybe looking like they may be leaning towards radicalism? Have you noticed an increase in them being willing to share that information and talk about their concerns?
Yeah, I think and I echo what has been mentioned. I do think that more needs to be done. I think more from the perspective of the fact that an open dialogue, people have actually come and mentioned that they're aware of people who have, slightly different methodologies and ideologies, which are, of course, violence-based. Of course, nothing has happened from that, but they might have said that they might sympathise with some of the people who have done that violence itself. And I think we do try to address it in the mosque. There are some sermons on the concept of ISIS and this methodology itself. I do feel, though, one thing would be there is a fear, unfortunately, now whereby this open dialogue of coming to your local imam or scholar and talking openly about these issues which you're afflicted by, to really open up. And I think that we do need to create an environment whereby we don't let this fester underground. A lot of the traits you'll see of these people who are involved in these kind of acts of violence, they're not really involved in the community and they keep themselves isolated. And so it's important that they're able to come to their local imams and have that dialogue, and so we can refute them in the correct way.
There are serious question marks about what the intelligence agencies knew. We know, as I heard yesterday from a community activist 2 years ago, he reported it to the counter-terrorism hotline. We need to see and understand what information was passed on and whether that was monitored. We know that he was under surveillance as well. But yeah, there's got to be a dialogue between the police and intelligence agencies and within the Muslim community. I'd argue here in Greater Manchester, we've got excellent relationships with the police, and we're doing a tremendous amount of work to build that trust that is so essential, that if there are people out there involved in terrorism and people are aware of it, that they report that as swiftly as possible, because we cannot allow this to continue.
No. So is this as much a failure of the system, a failure of the intelligence services to act, as it is a failure of the Muslim community to take responsibility, in your view?
Yeah, I think all of us have got to take responsibility. It's not just about the Muslim community. Yes, there's an added responsibility because they distort our Islamic teachings and the ideology that we've got to confront. But yeah, all of us, government, civic society, the media, all of us have got to reflect on how we can create a better environment, as the Imam said, so that we can allow young people a platform to air views around foreign policy, around radicalisation, around the fact that people feel isolated and disconnected from society. society. These are issues that we've got to address, and we've got to address it in a tolerant and respectful way.